Friend, have you noticed how sometimes brands can just make you feel more sporty or inspiring or elegant without you consciously thinking about it? Like you just put a plain white t-shirt on that has a symbol in it from a brand, and then all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit more athletic. The reason for this is because our emotions, they precede our rational thinking. So we feel things before we can actually rationalize about them. And a lot of the decisions that we make, they're not really deliberate. They're automatic. They're just a response to a stimuli. And emotions actually play a much bigger role in consumers' decision making and the attitudes that we form or the perception that we create of things than we can actually consciously consider. So in this video, I want to talk about classical conditioning, which is a concept that is so well known with so many practical applications that so many brands use. So it's really important that you understand. But before I explain to you what classical conditioning is, I need to introduce you to the esteemed gentleman Ivan Pavlov. He was a Russian physiologist, and he was actually doing this classical experiment, which I'm sure you've learned in school or something. But he was actually trying to understand the digestive systems of dogs. What he did during his experiment is that he would ring a bell, and then he would bring the meat paste for the dogs, and then he would measure the salivation of the dogs. And then after repeated pairings, ring the bell and then bring the meat paste, he started noticing something funny, that he would ring the bell and then the dog would start salivating before the food even came. Now, wait a minute, there's something funny here. If the dog smells the meat paste or if he sees the meat paste, it makes sense that he would salivate, right? Because dogs like meat paste. However, if he just heard a sound, what does that sound have to do with anything? He understood there the premises of classical conditioning, which is if you pair an unconditional stimuli with a conditional stimuli, as a consequence of that multiple pairing, if you remove the unconditioned stimuli and if you leave the conditioned one, it's going to lead to a conditioned response. Let me explain. In this case, the unconditioned stimuli is the meat paste. It's unconditioned because it leads normally to an unconditioned response. In other words, if the dog sees or smells the meat paste, he's going to want to eat it. So he's going to probably salivate. That's a natural response. There's no conditioning. The bell has nothing to do with anything. So that's what we call a conditioned stimuli or a neutral stimuli. Yeah, because it should not make any dog want to eat anything just by hearing the sound of a bell. So if you pair that unconditioned stimuli with the conditioned stimuli multiple times, and if you remove the unconditioned, now the condition can lead to a conditioned response. In other words, if you ring the bell and bring the meat paste, ring the bell and bring the meat paste, and then if you do this multiple times, so multiple pairing, if you remove the meat paste only by ringing the bell, the dog's going to salivate. So that is the main overall rationale of classical conditioning. Now that you understand, let's bring our discussion here to our context of marketing psychology. Brands use this rationale a lot. And let's take a brand that I really like, which is Adidas. A lot of the ways in how we view Adidas. So for example, I really like wearing Adidas and Adidas Originals. And a lot of the way in how I see the brand and how the brand makes me feel all comes through association. For example, let me show you two visuals. This is the first visual with 3 stripes. If you see it, does it make you want to do sports or feel sporty? Probably not. Look at this second design, which is the Adidas logo. It's going to trigger in you a sense of sportiness and wanting to run and be energetic and so on. Why? The difference is because the first design you probably didn't see in any way, shape, or form related to sports. The second one you saw multiple times associated with athletes, football boots, running gear, competitions, jerseys, teams. So in the case of branding, the actual design, for example, the logo of the brand is the neutral stimuli because it's just a drawing, it's just a design. You should not see a drawing and feel sporty. But the reason why we do it is because we pair the neutral stimuli or the conditioned stimuli, which is the design, the logo of the brand, with the unconditioned stimuli, which are the athletes, the competitions, the teams. And if you have a repeated pairing and you remove the athlete, and now what you have is just a product, shoe, a pants, bags, t-shirts, hoodies, and simply by wearing that product, you're gonna feel different. This is why brands pay so much money for brand ambassadors, right? And they choose very carefully who these ambassadors are, because these ambassadors are people who communicate different values. Essentially, there's two important categories of ambassadors. One is what we call source attractive models, which are people who are visually attractive, or they're charismatic, or they're funny. And you also have credibility source models. These are people who are very good in what they do, very credible from what they do, either because they accomplish great things or because they have, important titles, they're a doctor, whatever. So anyway, brands will pay a lot of money to create associations between these people and their brand. But if you understand this rationale, you're also going to understand that you can also condition with many other forms of stimuli, like for example, music, right? Jingle. So if you listen to a jingle and then you know what is the jingle of Coca-Cola, right? So very often we hear like a small melody and we associate with the brand because we saw that so often in the commercial. So again, the commercial needs repetition. It needs repeated pairing. Repeated pairing is really like the inner secret of classical conditioning. And you can also condition with other forms of stimuli, like for example, smells. So a lot of hotels, they develop their own fragrances so they can associate, with that hotel. And as consequence of the association, generally speaking, classical conditioning triggers more emotional or affective responses. Now, if you're a marketing student, you probably came across models of brand personality, right? So for example, one of the most classic ones is from Jennifer Aker, and she has that 5-dimension personality model: sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. So if you see a brand as being rugged or as sophisticated, as competent, where does this sort of association comes from? A lot of it comes from classical conditioning. So take the example of Red Bull, right? So Red Bull is often seen as an exciting brand. So they pair themselves with Formula One, with skydiving, with extreme sports. So every time when you see the brand, you associate with that type of activity or that type of emotion. And as a consequence, you're going to have a perception of the personality of the brand as being exciting. And beyond brands, the same associations we can make to products, either product categories or specific products. So let me give you an example of a product category. Take the product which I hope you don't like, but I certainly don't, which are cigarettes. Right? There's nothing good about the product. Gives people cancer. Anyway, just a terrible product. But if you look at the behavior of a lot of people smoking, especially youngsters, if you observe them outside, they behave as if they were being sophisticated or elegant, who smoke and open their chest. And where does that come from? There's a great website that I'm going to put the link on the description of this video for you to watch, which is from the University of Stanford. They do a wonderful research on cigarette advertising. And it's really clear, especially in the post-World War II, on how there was a very strong effort to link cigarettes with something as being luxurious or being, for the handsome guy in the film, the very beautiful dressed lady, and, the guy with the gel in his hair with a suit on and smoking a cigarette. People carry this behavior all the way until today. And the interesting thing is that now we're doing the inverse, right? We're trying to change the way that people see smoking so that they, smoke less, because it's definitely not good for you. Another really interesting case is of Ray-Ban, the sunglasses. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Ray-Ban, but until 1999, you could find Ray-Bans at gas stations for like $19, $20. And then it was bought by Luxottica, which owns many other brands of glasses. And what they did was they took the brand completely off the market and completely revamped it, changed the communication entirely, and then really boosted the price. So because if the price is high, people created an association that is of good quality and that is of high status for people with high purchasing power. And then you create that type of associations with a product. This is exactly what happened. And then the sales skyrocketed, and it's very unlikely that you're going to find a Ray-Ban for less than like $100 here in Europe. But it's also very important to say that association does not guarantee purchase. Yeah, the experience that the consumer has with a product is going to either change, maintain, or improve that association. So going back to the case of Adidas, I've been a long time consumer of Adidas because the experience that I have with the product reaffirms what I think of it, which is of a high quality, cool looking design. But there's also lots of other examples, which I'm not going to share here, but that I consume the product, I'm like, oh, this is definitely not what I imagined or what I thought, and then it changed. So the associations that we have, they're not static, and they can permanently change. And experience with a product is definitely something that can influence either positively or also negatively. So my friend, what I'd like you to take away from this video and from the understanding of classical conditioning is that brands don't just communicate meaning, but they acquire meaning by repeated associations with specific stimuli that can convey something that they would like to be attached to. It doesn't matter if it's a sense of excitement, a sense of ruggedness, a sense of, sportiness or luxury or whatever the emotion or meaning is. So to finalize, so once you understand classical conditioning, you start seeing branding less as persuasion and more as learned emotions. A lot of these affective emotional responses that we have towards brands and that we have towards products and product categories are just resultant from a learning process. And to finalize, you know that in all my video series, I like to finish by recommending music and albums specifically. Don't just listen to single tracks, my dear friend. Listen to albums. And the album that I'd like to recommend this time is Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. It's a wonderful classic album, and it has one of the songs that for me is one of the most beautiful songs of all times, called God Only Knows. So listen to Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys, and specifically listen to God Only Knows. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Most of the people watching these videos, they're not subscribed to the channel. If you know people who are taking marketing courses, send it to them. It might be helpful to them as well. I wish you a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next video where I'm going to explain another marketing concept and recommend you more beautiful music.